Hey, good morning. It's Pastor Jeff with your Sunday morning message from here at Freedom Church. Thank you so much for tuning in with us. Today, I want to talk to you about the difference between leadership styles of collaboration and expertise, and how Jesus was a collaborator and an expert. But we, as human beings, not God's Son, can only make an impact through collaboration. And I talked at length last week about how people need to view Christians as compassionate and empathetic, not just sympathetic. We closed out talking about how sympathy is telling someone we see them hurting and we're going to pray for them. Empathy is telling them we see them hurting and we sit right there next to them. And compassion is what Jesus showed us time and time again. It's, I see your hurts and I'm going to do everything in my power to make the pain no longer. Today, I'm peeling back another layer. I want us to think about how the world views us and what they need from us as Christians. What they do not need is an expert. They do not need us spouting scriptures and telling them what they should be doing. What they don't need is information. Just telling them won't help them. What they need is transformation. And transformation is messy and dirty. It takes work, and no amount of information will get them there. I'm going to date myself right here, but every one of us walks around with an entire library of encyclopedias in our pocket every single day. Every human who owns a smartphone right now can get information. So when we're giving people information, we're not really helping. What we need to be giving them is collaboration. It starts with how we portray Christianity. For instance, we have all heard the saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you cannot make him drink. And that's true. Our job's not to make anyone drink. Our job is to make people thirsty. They should notice something different about us in situations where others would completely melt down. They should see something different about our outlook on life as a whole and our perspective. And here's the truth about the whole thing we call faith. God could have just given us the Bible, and many, many people would have been different and would have changed, had their lives changed by simply reading His Word. But instead, He gave us His Word and He gave us His Son to bridge that gap. And if anyone ever walked this earth as an expert in all things, it was Jesus. But yet, He chose to collaborate. Jesus chose to do life with us for over 30 years. He walked this earth building relationships and speaking mostly in parables because He was bridging the gap between His Heavenly Father and us. People should see that we don't spend any time lifting up, praising, or worshiping any man or any woman, that we save that energy for the one who saved us. We don't jump onto every bandwagon that comes by. We don't celebrate every human thing that everybody celebrates. We celebrate Jesus. So here's the truth about Jesus. He didn't come to build a religion. He came to build relationships. He came to build relationships with you and with me, His Father's greatest creation. And He came to do it through love. I want to share quite a few verses with you today, but we're going to be looking at Luke chapter 15. We're going to start with verse 11. We're going to talk about some verses before that. But it says this, and there was a man who had 2 sons, and the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the share of my property that is coming to me. And he divided his property between them. Not many days later, the young son gathered all he had and took a journey into a far country. And there he had squandered his property in reckless living. And when he had spent everything, a severe famine arose in the country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him into his fields to feed pigs. And he was longing to be fed with the pods that the pigs ate, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, how many of my father's hired servants have more than enough bread, but I perish here with hunger? I will arise and go to my father And I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired servants. And he arose and came to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion and ran and embraced him and kissed him. And the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, Bring quickly the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet. And bring the fattened calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And they began to celebrate. Now his older son was in the field. And as he came and drew near to the house, he heard music and dancing. And he called one of the servants and asked what these things meant. And he said to him, Your brother has come home, and your father has killed the fattened calf, because he has received him back, safe and sound. But he was angry and refused to go in. His father came out and entreated him, but he answered his father, Look, these many years I have served you. I never disobeyed your command. Yet you never gave me a young goat, that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fattened calf for him. And he said to him, Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. It was fitting to celebrate and be glad, for this your brother was dead and is alive. He was lost and is found. Now, this one chapter in Luke gave us the parable of the lost sheep, the parable of the lost coin, and the most famous one, the prodigal son. And language is funny, isn't it? I mean, look at the words that are used by our teens today. Look at the way things morph in meaning over the years. And look at how clueless we are when our kids say something to us and we have to use Urban Dictionary or Google to find out exactly what type of insult they just hurled at us without us even realizing it. Jesus was speaking in language that would hit home for them at that time. But we can also associate with today. When he spoke, he knew his words would be around for thousands of years and used today as part of the Bible. So it's relevant to us too. Jesus talked about, before the verses that I just shared with you, about the lost sheep, and then the lost coin, and then the prodigal son. All of which are examples of why Jesus came to earth. But the first two were words for the people. That third one, the parable of the prodigal son, was for the Pharisees. You know, the experts, the religious elites, if you will, of that day. Jesus explained the parable of the lost sheep to help us understand that each and every one of us is of equal importance to him. He told the parable of the lost coin because we've all looked all over for something we had lost. And when you're looking for it, you lose track of pretty much everything else in your life, including time. But that prodigal son, that's the big one. It was a strike against religion and a strike against the church. It was a strike against elites who thought they were better because they had not strayed per se. But it was also an invitation for all of us to embrace our straying. All of us, every person who is watching this, is strayed from God. It may have been for a few minutes, a few days, a few months, or a few years. But we've all done it. And we all long to be welcomed back. Even though Jesus never left during the stray, he seemed distant because we had moved. Here's another important lesson in the parable of the lost sheep. The shepherd went himself. If you have 100 sheep, you've got hired hands. There's no way one human being is watching 100 sheep. You have people that work under you and take care of those sheep. The shepherd didn't send help. He went himself. He left the hired hands in charge of the 99, and he went himself to find the one. But here's the truth about all three of these stories, these parables, if you will. We far too often read the Bible like we look at a magazine. Or, better yet, we look at the Bible the way we look at yearbooks. When you were a kid, you got your yearbook. You immediately went to the back of the book, and if it listed the pages you were pictured on, you simply went to those pages. You knew what you looked like. You knew when the pictures were taken. You still wanted to go and do what? See yourself in your yearbook. Don't act like you didn't do that. When we read the Bible, we try so hard to put ourselves into the story that we make the stories of the Bible about us. The story of the lost sheep. Oh, I once was lost, but now I'm found. The story of the lost coin. I was lost, but now I'm found. The parable of the prodigal son. I too have gone astray and come back begging for mercy. We force ourselves in the roles that aren't necessarily what the point is, because we look so hard for ourselves in the Bible. The parable of the lost sheep. That shepherd went to find the lost sheep. He didn't send his help. He went to find them. Parable of the lost coin. The owner looked for it. They didn't ask for help. They didn't look for help. But the prodigal son, many of us are so judgmental of others because we've been here. And for the most part, we feel like we've been living right in God's eyes. And the truth is, most of us are sitting here today. We're not the prodigal son at all. We're actually the son that was there all along and got mad when the father celebrated him. If we're completely honest, we often find ourselves getting mad about something good happening for someone who we think is less deserving than us of that blessing, whatever it may be. It's another example of where we need collaboration, not expertise. Expertise builds platforms, and platforms create distance, and distance feeds egos. But on the other hand, collaboration builds stairs and bridges gaps. When we speak as an expert on something, we're widening the gap. When we collaborate with someone, we're bridging the gap. Pastoring and leading, whether it's in work, in your community, or in your home, leading is collaboration. It's not about me being up here talking. It's not about me sharing this message. It's about us doing life together and becoming a family. Luke 10, 29 through 37 says this, "But he, desiring to justify himself, said to Jesus, 'And who is my neighbor?' And Jesus replied, 'A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he fell among robbers who stripped him and beat him and departed, leaving him half dead. Now by chance a priest was going down that road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. So likewise a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side as well. But a Samaritan, as he journeyed, came to where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion. He went to him and bound up his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he set him on his own animal and brought him to an inn and took care of him. And the next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper, saying, "Take care of him, and whatever more you spend, I will repay you when I come back." Which of these 3 do you think proved to be a neighbor to the man who fell among the robbers? He said, "The one who showed him mercy." And Jesus said to him, "You go and do likewise." What did the man need from them? We so often are afraid to help people because we don't know what they need. We don't understand people, and we don't fully grasp who they are, so we don't offer help. I say this quite often. Jesus came to love. We're to be his representatives of love. And we don't have to fully understand someone or understand their needs to love them through it. Sympathy at times can cause us to be numb or to even victim blame. They shouldn't have been traveling alone. They shouldn't have been there. We've heard it all. Not one bit of victim blaming will ever make life better for anyone except for the perpetrators. Sympathy is seeing them and validating the situation. Empathy, in this case, is validating their needs and validating them as a human being. The other thing that information and expertise create is shame. And no one wants shame added to what they're going through in life. When I mess up, when I say or do something that is contrary to what God would want me to do or say, I've sinned. And when I sin, I should feel a certain amount of conviction. But my relationship and my faith in God should be at a place where I don't experience shame. Conviction is having big biceps. Most people, most men want to have big biceps. They look good, they make us feel better about ourselves, and they help us do work at a higher capacity. But what we really need is core muscles. Because biceps, they can't help you sit in the chair. They can't help you stand. And they can't help you sit right next to someone in need. And in those moments of stillness, we struggle the most with shame if our core is not based on our relationship with God first and with ourselves second. If we're not that way, we collapse no matter how big our biceps are. See, empathy is the tool that helps us at the core to sit out shame. Leadership. Leading in any aspect should be done more like a duck than a seagull. Collaboration is a duck. Even when they are in distress of some sort, you can't tell because they're just cruising along in the water, making very small ripples. Their legs, they're moving 100 miles per hour, and their bodies are just as still as can be above the water. And the water is barely upset by it. They come crashing in and they sit right next to their duck friends and they swim along with their duck friends. You don't know what's going on below the surface. That's collaboration. That's a real leader. But seagulls, the seagull style of leading is this. They come in, they make a whole lot of noise, they eat all the food, and they crap all over everything, and they leave. What we need in this world, what the world needs for us as believers, is collaboration. People willing to do life with them, no matter who they are or where they're coming from. What this world doesn't need is expertise. People that show up, make a bunch of noise, eat all the food, crap all over the place, and then leave. Have a great day, and God bless.